Erev Tov, everyone. Erev Tov. And it is Monday. It's Monday night. It is 8 p.m. here on the east side of the United States, here in the diaspora. This is the House of Seven Beggars. Therefore, it must be Zeyde Story Corner. That's right, Zeyde Story Corner. And again, we are reading from the book The Silly World of Helm. And where your relatives come. No, don't start that with my relatives come from Helm. They do not come from Helm. I'm just saying, okay, we've been through this before. Because my aunt just had a little mistake does not mean that my family is from Helm. I'm just saying, okay, well, let's just forget about that and let's get on with our story, shall we? So we are past Pesach, and great Pesach Seder. Yeah, it was a nice Pesach Seder. It was a little thin compared to what we usually have. We usually have a house full of people, and it was just me and my wife, and oh yeah, and you, yeah. Don't forget me, yeah. Okay, so anyway, so it was my wife and myself and Zeyde, of course. We're at the Seder, and we had a wonderful time. Had a good turnout. So we are back to our regular schedule. So let's see who we have in the chat room. We have Donald, we have Shoshi, we have Kelsey Lynn, we have Henry. Good to see you, Henry. And others watching in the background. Yeah, others watching in the background. So we are going to, as I said, continue because of what's going on in the world and everything out there. That there's so much bad news, and there really isn't that bad. Yeah, I know. There is a lot of good things going on out there, and we thought that during this time that we would take a little break and we would delve into some silly stories. From the famous stories of the city of Helm. So, well, why don't we get to it? Yeah, okay, let's get to it. Let me go ahead and I will put you on your camera. And there I am. I am a good-looking Zeyde. Okay. So I'm a little off-center there. Can you fix that? Please, a little bit. Yeah, I can do that. Yes, I can. Let's see. We'll just move that over a little bit. Okay, now don't get into my shot. I'm trying not to get into your shot. So just give me a minute, and okay, that looks okay. I can work with this. Okay, glad to hear it. Okay, so our first story is called The Aeroplane. According to historians, many years ago, there was an airplane that had accidentally landed in the village of Helm. The pilot, who would be normally flying the Pinsk to Minsk run, mistook Helm for Minsk. As if that was really that possible. Anyway, the sage of Helm was called out to greet the strangers and examine the plane. Since this was a trial run, only the pilot and the stewardess were aboard the plane. They welcomed the old sage aboard the plane, and he marveled at the 20th century progress. How would you and some of your disciples like to take a ride in the airplane? I can fly you to the big city and back in minutes, the pilot exclaimed. Well, no one believed him, but the sage exclaimed, "If the man says it's so, Why don't we go in the airplane and see if he's right? The 10 members of the village and the sage boarded the plane. The motors roared, and in a few minutes the plane was airborne. They were amazed, but as the pilot continued to go higher and higher, the sage's disciples began to complain that the pressure on their ears was beginning to pain them. You kind of have that problem. Yes, I do. I do have that problem. Yes, yes. Here, take a few pieces of chewing gum, the hostess suggested. It should help. The plane continued, and when it reached Minsk, it turned around and went back to help. After it landed, the stewardess saw all the astonishment and smiling faces. "Did you enjoy the trip?" she asked. They all nodded. "Did chewing gum help?" she questioned. "Oh, yes," they agreed. But with one voice they asked, "How do we get the chewing gum out of our ears?" Okay. Here's another story about an airplane. Okay. So, this is called the Airplane 2. I guess this would be the sequel to the first one. Okay. Once upon a time, in the village of Helm, a traveling circus set up shop in the center of town. The big excitement was the fact that the circus had a real airplane. No one in Helm had ever seen an airplane before. So when the pilot asked 10 kopecks, that's a lot of money, 10 kopecks for a ride, everyone looked at him strangely. No one was willing to spend the 10 kopecks. Finally, the pilot said, "I will take any couple up in this plane for free. But I guarantee the ride will be so exciting you will scream for joy. If anyone in the plane says but one word, they will have to pay the 10 kopecks." Well, finally, Moshe and his wife, Malka, stepped forward and volunteered. Now remember, the pilot warned once more, if either of you say one word once we leave the ground, you will have to pay the 10 kopecks. Moshe and his wife agreed. They got into the plane, and the great engines began to roar. In a few seconds, the plane was in the air. The pilot pushed the plane high above the fields and expected some comment of how beautiful the countryside was. But there wasn't a sound. Then he dived the plane toward the ground at 200 miles an hour. But not a sound came from either Moshe and his wife. Then the pilot began to do a series of loop-de-loops and then some spins, expecting at least a forced scream from his passengers, but there was not a sound. Finally, in disgust, the pilot decided it was hopeless and landed the plane. "I have to hand it to you," the pilot smiled. You sure have self-control. Not a single sound from either of you. Moshe beamed proudly and smiled. For a minute, I thought it was going to cost me 10 kopecks. Why? Asked the pilot. Why? Exclaimed the Moshe. I was almost certain my wife Molka was going to scream when she fell out. Okay, enough with the airplanes, huh? Okay. This one is called The Animal Lover. Okay, now, I know some of you are going to say, oh, I know this story. Anybody who is a fan of Peter Sellers, he's going to recognize this story as soon as we get to the end. But still, it's a funny story. Okay. It's called The Animal Lover. Once upon a time, as if you didn't see that coming, in the little village of Helm, a stranger was passing through on his way to the big city. It was very hot and dry, and the stranger stopped into a little tea shop for some refreshment. Yunkel, the owner of the shop, came over to the stranger and asked if he could serve him. A glass of hot tea would be perfect, the stranger said with a smile. In a few moments, Yunkel returned with the tea. The stranger drank it and smiled broadly. As he approached Yunkel to pay for the tea, he saw Yunkel sitting in the doorway with a beautiful, large dog. The animal was resting in the doorway. My, what a magnificent animal, the stranger commented as the dog stretched out to take in the sun. Indeed, he is a fine-looking animal, Yunkel agreed. I have a large dog like that of my own, the stranger said. Yunkel smiled. You must be a very lucky man indeed. The stranger continued to admire the dog, and he smiled at Yunkel and asked, Does your dog bite? Yunkel replied warmly, No, my dog does not bite. The stranger smiled back with confidence and leaned over to pet the beautiful dog. Suddenly the dog turned with a snarl and a growl and ferociously snapped at the stranger's hand. The stranger pulled back with indignation. Say, what is this? That dog almost tore me to ribbons. I asked you a simple question. Does your dog bite? And you said no. How do you explain this? Yunkel shrugged innocently. Because that's not my dog. My wife took ours for a walk. Okay. Inspector Clouseau, if you will turn the page, I will turn the page. Okay. This story is called The Bird Seed. Okay. Once upon a time, you think they would vary the beginning of this just to give it a little more interesting. Well, that's the way the stories are written. I know, but once upon a time this, and once upon a time that, and once upon a time the other thing. What are you going to do, huh? Okay. Once upon a time, in the little village of Helm, Yunkel came running into the house of the sage of Helm and exclaimed, "Oh, great wise sage, I have made a remarkable discovery." The old sage leaned over in anticipation and replied, "So, tell me, what have you discovered?" "Let me start at the beginning," Yunkel excitedly, trying to catch his breath. "You see, last week I went to the big city to find a shoemaker to repair my shoes. And while in the city, I had a chance to walk along the street to see the wonderful shops. They have all kinds of shops there. You would be amazed." "No? So tell me about your discovery," said the old sage. "Well, as I passed one shop, I noticed they had hundreds of beautiful birds flying around in the store window. There were birds of every color. Some were red, some were black, some were combinations, magnificent birds. So I decided that I would go in the shop and see if I could purchase one of those beautiful birds. But when I got into the shop and asked the owner how much he would charge me for a bird, I discovered I only had 2 kopek left. The man laughed at me and said, 'For 2 kopeks, all I can sell you is some bird seed.' Now, you might ask, why would I want bird seed? A good question. But before I could answer that question, the man had already filled up the bag with 2 kopeks worth of bird seed. What a steal!" "What do you mean?" exclaimed the old sage. "And what are you even going to do with bird seed? You don't even have a bird." "That's just it," exclaimed the uncle. "I do not have a single bird, but with this bag of bird seed and my farm, do you realize how many birds I can grow from this many seeds?" The old sage put his head into his hands and sighed. "Indeed, uncle, you are a genius." Okay. I like that one. Yeah, I kind of like that one too. Okay. So, here's another bird story. Okay, and just in case you haven't had enough of flying today. Okay. Batal was a simple man who lived with his mother Sarah in the little village of Helm. Look at that, they actually changed the beginning. Yes, they changed the beginning. Yeah. Oh, that's a welcome break. Okay, can we get on with the story? Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, let's get on with the story. Okay, so, Batal and his mother Sarah. Okay, so, they live in Helm. One day, Batal said to his mother, "Mama, I feel I have to strike out for myself. Helm is a wonderful city, but I cannot get an education I feel I will need to make it in the outside world." The old lady smiled warmly and exclaimed, "My son, you are right. You should go to America. There you will learn how to become a success. Many of our neighbors have gone to America, and everyone has become rich. You go to America. Here is every cent we have saved over the years. I will continue to work the farm and send you money for your education. Go, my son, go and succeed." Well, the young man went to America, where he soon learned how to become rich and successful. But he never forgot his dear old mama, who had scrimped and saved so he could become a success. One day, he realized his mother's birthday was approaching. "Since I am now wealthy," he said, "I must get my mother the most unique present money can buy." So, he sent his agents to the four corners of the world to find the most unique present money could buy. Finally, one of his agents contacted him from Mongolia, of all places. "I have found the most unique bird in the world. It speaks 14 languages and can sing like a chazan." The son wired back, "Buy the bird at any price. Money is no object where my mama is concerned." So the bird was shipped, along with a case of champagne, to the little old lady in the village of Helm. A few weeks later, the son called his mother to find out how she enjoyed the present. "Hello, Mama," he shouted into the phone. "This is Motel, your son, calling from America. I just wanted to know how you were and whether you enjoyed the birthday present I sent you." The old lady spoke coldly. "Mother, yes, I'm well, and I also received the present you sent me." "What's the matter, Mama? Didn't you like those gifts?" he questioned. "And they were very nice, and you are very thoughtful. Only I felt you should know that the ginger ale you sent me was sour, and the pigeon was as tough as shoe leather." "Ma!" exclaimed the son in shock. "That wasn't ginger ale, that was champagne. And don't tell me you cooked the little bird I sent you." The old lady sighed. "Yes, I did, and it was very tough." "Mom," Muttle shouted, "that little bird you cooked was probably the most unique bird in the world. It spoke 14 languages." The old lady snapped back angrily. "No, so why didn't it say something?" Good point, huh? Yes, very good point, yeah. Okay, we are going to do one more and then we are going to take our break. Okay. You should like this one. Yes, I read it. Yes, yes. It seems you have a granddaughter on the way. Yes, especially since I have a granddaughter on the way. Mazel tov to you and your son and his wife and your wife and all the other people. Okay. Can we get on with the story? Yes, we can get on with the story. Okay, so this story is called The Blessed Event. Here we go again. Once upon a time, in the little village of Helm, Motel the tailor walked into the village shul very forlorn. "What is it, my friend?" the sage of Helm questioned. Mottel sighed deeply and explained, "Ah, my wife is having a baby, and the doctor is with her now. He said it was not going to be easy, so I have come to pray for her." The sage of Helm put his arm around Mottel's shoulder and said, "I will gather a minyan, and we will pray for her." He ran out of the little shul, and in a few minutes he returned with 10 men. They quickly opened their siddurim and began to pray. "Now, my friend," the sage exclaimed, "you may return home. I am certain the Lord has answered our prayers. You go home, and we will continue to pray." Mottel thanked the old sage and began walking home while the 10 men continued to pray. Well, a little bit later, Mottel returns, all smiles. "It's a boy! It's a beautiful boy!" he shouted. Everyone wished him Mazel Tov. "Now, you return to your wife. I'm sure she needs you. We will continue praying," the sage exclaimed. Well, Mottel left, all smiles, and in a few minutes he returned to the shul. "It's twin boys! It's twin boys!" he shouted. The men looked up from their praying once more and wished him Mazel Tov. The old sage put his hand on Mottel's shoulder and said, "Thank you for returning to tell us, but you really should be at your wife's side in these tender moments." Mottel thanked the old sage and returned to his home as the men continued praying. In a few minutes, Mottel came back out of breath. He ran up to the front of the congregation and pleaded, "Please, please, I beg you, stop praying. The third one just arrived." Maybe that will. I don't think that's going to happen. No, not with ours. Yeah, you could never tell. Yeah, that's true. You can't ever tell. So we'll just pray to Hashem that we have one that's healthy. Yeah. That's a good idea. Okay. So, shall we take our break? Yeah, we should take out a break now. Okay, so we are about halfway through our time, so we are going to take out a break. And when we return, we will pick up with our next story, which is called The Blessing. Okay, so stay tuned, and we be back in 6.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Delicious things to eat.
The popcorn can't be beat. The sparkling drinks are just dandy. The chocolate bars and the candy. So let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
It's intermission time, folks, so hurry, hurry, hurry. Step right over to our refreshment center for the most extravagant array of refreshment goodies ever assembled under one roof. Enjoy breathtaking, mouth-watering goodies, everything from a snack to a delicious full meal. At our refreshment center, you'll find a large variety of goodies to satisfy your hunger, your thirst, or your sweet tooth. So hurry, hurry, hurry. Visit our refreshment center now. The show starts in 5 minutes. The show starts in 4 minutes. The show starts in 3 minutes. The show starts in 2 minutes. The show starts in 1 minute. And now, on with the show.
And we are back, just as promised. Okay, I see Colleen and Marshall have joined us. Good to have you with us. Okay, so we are going to continue on with our stories now. This one is called The Blessing. It was a cold winter's day in the little village of Helm. See, they don't always start with once upon a time. I didn't say they always start that way. I said a lot of them start that way. Okay. Yeesh. Okay, so anyway, if I'm not going to be disturbed anymore, I will continue with these stories if that's okay with you. It's okay with me. Please continue. Thank you very much. Okay, so it was a cold winter's day, this time in this story, in the little village of Helm. Shmuel the Pious One was desperately poor. He walked the streets begging for a crust of bread for his wife and children. But there were hard times in Helm, and there were few who even had anything to offer. Indeed, he tried to find work in the little village of Helm, but there were few jobs available. After all, who needs a scholar in a village of fools? And so he walked the streets begging. Every so often, someone helped, but it was usually a coin or two, hardly enough to feed a family. Well, it happened one night as the temperature began to drop even further. Shmuel the Pious One walked toward the river and accidentally slipped on a puddle that had turned to ice. He fell to the ground with a thud and broke his leg. Those who saw the incident carried him to the hospital, and soon word began to circulate around the neighboring villages that a poor man with practically nothing to eat had fallen and broken his leg. The story touched the hearts of everyone, and donations began pouring into the hospital. The donations were followed by quantities of food and warm clothing for himself, his wife, and his children. That night, after his evening prayers, Shmuel the Pious One took a pencil in hand and wrote a letter to his wife. And so he wrote, "My darling wife, indeed God in heaven has been good to us. Today, in his infinite wisdom and kindness, he broke my leg. Everyone has been so generous." His wife wrote back, "Fool, had you broken both legs, we would have enough to visit my mother in Minsk." Some people just can't be such. I know. But did you notice that he said he thanked God for the what he thought, what others would have thought were a misfortune, and he saw it as a blessing. Yes, he did. So it is all for our own good. All for our own good. So, there you go. There you have it. Okay. Oh, this is a good one. Yes, I agree with you. This is a very good one. Yes. Okay. So, shall we read it? Yes, let's read this one. This is called The Briefcase. Okay. Here we go again. Okay, can we just read the story? Once upon a time, the old sage of Helm was invited to speak at the great shul in Minsk. So the old sage began preparing many notes concerning his lecture. For days on end, he sat at his desk preparing his material. Finally, when he had finished, he placed his notes carefully in his little briefcase. Listen, his wife said, while you are in Minsk, it would be nice if you stopped off at my sister's house to honor her with your presence. The old sage smiled. It would be my honor. So his wife began to pack a suitcase for him. Soon the big day arrived, and the old sage, along with his friends, began to walk to the railway station. They were indeed proud. Little Shepsil, the sage's most brilliant disciple, walked at his side, carrying the heavy suitcase. As the entourage reached the station, they could see smoke from the approaching train. Everyone gathered around to wish the old sage well. Suddenly, the old sage looked around and asked, "Where is my briefcase? I don't see my briefcase." Everyone looked, but there was no briefcase to be found. "Wait, wait," exclaimed the old sage. "I remember seeing it on the kitchen table when we left the house." He turned to his student Shepsil and shouted, "Quick, run back to my house. Go as quickly as possible. I will try to hold the train. See if my briefcase is on the kitchen table." Shepsil sprinted at an incredible speed. He raced out of the station like a bullet. Meanwhile, the train pulled in. When the conductor saw the old sage waiting to get on board, he was very pleased to see him. "We must wait until Shepsil comes back," the station master announced to the conductor, who was busy looking at his calendar. "You know I have a schedule to keep," the conductor called back. "I am due in Minsk at 2:15, and already we are late." In the distance, a cloud of dust began to rise. "It's Shepsil," they all shouted. In a few seconds, Shepsil was back at the station, out of breath and empty-handed. A hush fell over the crowd. Everyone was disappointed to see he did not have the briefcase. "Wasn't the briefcase on the kitchen table?" they all shouted as the train ready to pull out. "Yes, yes," Shepsil shouted. "Our sage was right. The man is infallible. He knows everything. Indeed, it was on the kitchen table." And so they all cheered, lifting the old sage on their shoulders, carrying him to the train. "Our sage was right. He knew exactly where it was," they sang as they marched back to their little village. I think I've run into people like that. Well, let's not go into that. Okay. So, that was a good story. Yeah, it was a good story. It's pretty funny, yeah. Oh, my goodness. I bet your aunt would have liked that. Oh, let's forget about that, would you please? Okay, so let us go on here. Okay, so this one is called the budget problem. You know, a lot of cities have budget problems these days. Yes, they do. And they usually handle it pretty much the same way that they do here. They do. Well, yeah, I guess we probably should read it so you can see just how much like Helm a lot of cities actually are. Okay, let's do that then. Okay, so this story is called The Budget Problem. Okay. Here we go again. Once upon a time, the village of Helm suffered a terrible financial crisis. The mayor let it be known that there was not enough money in the village coffers to pay its police force. What are we to do? The mayor asked the village elders. It is so simple, they exclaimed. We will outlaw crime. If we outlaw crime, then there will be no need to have a police force. How brilliant, thought the villagers. And so it was that crime became illegal in Helm, and the police force was done away with. The following year, the mayor once again called a meeting of the village elders and announced that they were in worse condition than they had been the year before. Since they outlawed crime and did away with the police department, the town treasurer had run off with the remaining funds. Indeed, a predicament, sighed the elders. But why do we need to have money in the town fund? They asked. Well, said the mayor, we need money to pave the streets. Well, of course, that makes sense. Yes, it does. The wise men of Helm put their heads together and declared, from now on, we will not pave any more streets. We have enough paved streets. And so it was that the budget crisis was solved. But the following year, the mayor met with the village elders and declared once more, I have sad news to tell you. We are out of town money once more. That is very sad, they said. Why did this happen? Well, said the mayor, since we no longer pave the roads, salespeople have stopped visiting our village. They used to pay taxes in order to make sales here. They have stopped coming because the broken roads destroyed their carts. It sounds a lot like Michigan. Okay, let's just forget about the statements about Michigan roads, okay? Okay, indeed, this is a problem, replied the elders. Where else can we save? They all thought and could find no solution. Finally, the wisest of the elders, known as the sage of Helm, got up and spoke. What do we need town money for? We have outlawed crime, so we do not need a police force. Since the tradesmen do not visit our community anymore, we do not need to pave our streets. So what do we need money for? Well, I must be paid, said the mayor. Since I became mayor, I have not had a chance to work my farm. My only source of income comes from being mayor of our city. Ah, smiled the wisest man in Helm. The answer is simple. If we let you go back to your farm, You will not need a salary to manage our town, which runs by itself. Therefore, it is decreed that the village of Helm from this day on will no longer require a mayor. Everyone agreed. Indeed, this was the solution that would save the village from bankruptcy. But it did not. Soon, a group of scholars gathered at the door of the sage of Helm. "Oh, dear sage," they said, "we are but humble teachers. True, we get satisfaction from teaching the children, but we still have to eat. It has been months since we have been paid, and now we have been told there isn't enough money in the town treasury for even 1 week's pay." The sage of Helm shook his head in disbelief. "I am so sorry. How could this have happened?" "We don't know," said the teachers. "But please understand, if we cannot earn salaries as teachers, we must go back to the fields to plant crops so that our families can eat." "But who will teach our children?" asked the sage. "If there is no money to pay us, then the children will have to teach each other. The older ones, who are almost teachers, will teach the younger ones. We will return to our fields to feed our families." The sage of Helm shook his head sadly. But what could he do? However, despite all the money-saving ideas, the village remained in a bad financial state. "There is no more money to have even the smallest service carried out," the villagers complained to the sage. "Well," the sage wondered aloud, "what do we need money for now? We have done away with the police and the teachers, and we have stopped paving the roads. We no longer have our mayor. So what do we need money for?" The villagers thought and thought. Then finally one man exclaimed, "You're right!" "Indeed," said the sage. "So let it be known to all that from this day forward there will be no taxes collected in the village of Helm." Well, as soon as word reached the neighboring villages, everyone from miles around began to move to Helm. "Why should we pay taxes where we live?" they said. And so, in just a few days, the village of Helm was bursting with prosperity. In no time at all, new homes were built, and these new homeowners were paving their streets. They wanted their children to be educated, so they hired their own teachers. And those who wanted to protect their homes hired their own guards. And so, the budget problem was solved at last. So what do you think of that, huh? Okay, we're going to do one more, and then we're going to call it a night, okay? This is a funny one. This is a good one to end with. Okay, so this one is called The Bully. The little village of Helm not only had Jewish foolish souls as residents, they also had their fair share of non-Jewish fools. So it was that one day, as the old sage of Helm was walking down the street, a non-Jewish bully stepped up and punched him in the nose. Can you imagine such a thing? The old sage of Helm picked himself up, looked at the bully with a smile, and said, "Oh, thank you so much for punching me." The bully looked at him with surprise. The old sage continued, "You see, today is a very special holiday on which it is a great blessing for a Jew to be punched in the nose by a non-Jew. And according to the rules of this holiday, the Jew who is punched must reward the person who punched him. But since I am a poor man, all I can give you is 10 kopecks. However, since you were so kind to me, I thought you might want to know that a wealthy Jew lives in that house across the street. I believe, though I'm not sure, that he also observes this holiday. If you wait until he comes out and do the same to him, I am certain he will reward you 10 times the amount of money I gave you." Well, the bully was surprised, as you can imagine, huh? He thanked the old-timer and waited in front of the house as the old sage went on his way. So, in a few minutes, the man walked out. The bully stepped up to him, smiled warmly, and promptly punched him in the nose. Well, the man was a former professional prize fighter who had held many championships. Let loose with a few solid punches of his own and flattened the bully. Then he walked away without saying a word. Well, when the bully walked up, he scratched his head in surprise and said to himself, "Well, how do you like that? It's just my luck to run into one of those fellows who doesn't observe this holiday." And that, my friends, is the end of our stories for tonight. I hope you enjoyed them. I hope they brought a little bit of laughter into your heart. Okay, so don't forget that on Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern is the Torah study with Rabbi A and the Reb Reuben. You can thank me later. Well, thank you very much for mentioning that. Okay. And don't forget Friday night Kabbalat and Ma'ariv Shabbat service at 8 p.m. Eastern, and on Shabbat morning at 10 a.m. for Shachrit and Musaf. Until the next time, my dear friends, we shall say, Laila Tov.